one of the senior negotiating team, and Dave Kendrick from CAA, also senior negotiating team and looking after our interests. I want to make it really clear that these guys are acting on our behalf, and they were dealt the set of cards at the same time we all were, in terms of the Brexit agreement and everything that then followed on afterwards. So they're looking after our interests, but I won't steal their thunder anymore. I'll hand over to them to explain what's going on with the permitting process at the moment. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that, and good morning, everybody. Really appreciate the opportunity this morning just to have a quick 15-minute run through of some of the work that we've been doing and talk through some of the reactions that we've got. As I said, really pleased to have this opportunity and appreciate both the invitation from Mark, Lindsay, and colleagues at the BBGA, but also to recognise their work. As Mark said, it does feel like colleagues given the amount of times we've been meeting over the last couple of months, but their insight on the sector has been really critical in the work that we've been doing, so appreciate that, and I know there's a lot more work together to do on that, so we'll no doubt be meeting again frequently. Just worth saying perhaps who we are in a bit greater depth. I'm sure you know David, but you may not know me. From my side, as Mark mentioned, my name is Tim Cade. I'm in the Department of Transport's International Air Services Negotiations team, responsible for negotiating the UK's international air services agreements, and as part of that, the UK-EU elements on aviation, and also the arrangements that are connected to that as of the discussions that we're looking to have today. I'll probably pass over to David. As I said, I'm sure you recognise him.
Tim, everywhere I go, Tim says that as if everybody knows who I am. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here today. My name is David Kendrick. I head up the airline licensing department within the UK CAA, and I'm going to echo Tim's thanks to Mark, Lindsay, and indeed to others that have taken us through the technical process, particularly this morning, of how to actually be here. This is all a new experience for us, so I think you're going to have to bear with us today, but very much looking forward to bringing you up to speed and sharing with you some of the work that we've done today to try and make things better, because that's our intent behind all this. Tim, if I may.
Thanks, David. So I think Mark asked if we could just give a brief update on the bilateral discussions and engagement and the state of the market over the last couple of months since the end of the transition period. Worth saying, we've only got a couple of minutes, so I appreciate there may be a number of questions or points that you want to raise, and what we'd really encourage you to do is, if you can pass them through BBGA during or at the end of the meeting, we're very, very happy to answer those separately, either meet with you directly and explore those issues, or answer them through Mark and the team, as we have been doing already, because I appreciate we may not have the time to answer those today. So I think the first thing to say on this process is that we acknowledged well before the end of the transition period that the end of the transition period was going to bring change in a way this sector operated to Europe. Indeed, we'd identified this well before the end of the transition period, which is why there is specific scope within the Trade and Cooperation Agreement to continue discussions bilaterally with member states on important issues that affect the non-scheduled ad hoc sector. So in terms of the scope of these discussions that we've initiated and are having, they can cover a couple of broad areas, but in particular, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement points to two bits for aviation. The first is the exchange of all cargo fifth freedom rights between the UK and individual EU member states, although in this context, an all cargo fifth freedom is a service from the UK to the EU and a point beyond, and so perhaps not a great relevance to this group, although it's an important part of the discussions that we're having to ensure the UK continue to benefit from liberal all cargo arrangements. Perhaps of greater relevance and of interest is relating to the bilateral arrangements regarding the procedures to be followed for the handling of and decisions on air carriers applications. And that provision allows us to discuss bilaterally with member states around the processes for issuing permissions and also for dealing with higher freedom ad hoc services, those which the UK and member states are permitted to approve, but are not covered by the rights within the TCA. And it's really been those key points that have been part of the engagement that we've initiated with member states from the beginning of January. So we've been already written to all EU member states, had a great deal of engagement with a number already, and another number of formal discussions and negotiations planned over the coming weeks and months to explore and discuss these issues. Perhaps if I can just look on outcomes very quickly. So for operational permissions, naturally what we're looking to do is ensure that UK airlines can benefit from minimum administrative burden when they're looking at the permit process, and where they're not already in place or have equivalent systems, try and replicate the flexibility of the UK's block permit system. What we're clearly looking to address is any issues that UK ad hoc operators may have, especially in getting permissions for very short notice, go now charter operations that we know can often only have a couple of hours notice, and so the need for an operational permission can be an operational challenge if you've only got a couple of hours to do that service. So what we're doing is talking to EU member states, as I said, very closely to ensure that arrangements for those third or fourth freedom ad hoc services between the UK and the EU can be approved, and the permitting processes can be conducted as smoothly and as quickly as possible. Essentially, the work is around improving greater flexibility for these operators, and I'll touch on a bit later about what we've achieved in that area so far. The second bit, as I mentioned, was to do with higher freedom services, and I just want to state it's important to say that this is not about agreeing additional rights. The rights are covered in the TCA, but it's simply confirming whether there'll be equivalent treatment of non-scheduled services on higher freedom operations. So let's say a so-called seventh freedom non-scheduled operation between a point in the EU and a point outside the EU. This is in line with the long-standing principle that the UK has taken, which is to seek reciprocity of access when we're treating non-scheduled or higher freedom services. What our engagement is doing is understanding how EU member states plan to treat those services that are within their permission to grant, and then in turn consider how the UK can take a reciprocal approach. The outcome of these talks, as I said, there's been a number of discussions already. We've met with a number of member states this week, for instance, and I think it's fair to say, David, that the conversations have been very positive and constructive. We've seen good progress in some areas already. For instance, on the block permit, you'll know that France have introduced something similar to the UK scheme, and indeed Greece have as well. And we know a number of member states, part of engagement that we had done before the transition period, had already moved to such a position when covering UK airlines. Where states haven't got such systems, there's been good interest in the UK's block permit or other similar schemes, and the CAA are having technical conversations with those states on that basis. I think the last thing to say from me is that we are moving as quickly as we can here. We are completely appraised of the need for pace, but naturally progress important to be aware of those wider considerations. I wonder, David, whether you might add anything to that, but also comment perhaps on some of the experiences of operators and what operators can do to help us in these discussions.
Tim, thank you for that. One of the things I'll say I get into my advancing years is don't assume. And that's one of the areas that we have gone with our eyes open into the discussions we've actually had, very much based on the information that either you provided us directly or you've been providing us through the trade associations. One of the areas that we think has been a particular benefit to us is being able to go into the room with good examples of situations where things have gone well and where there may have been problems. That allows us to test the conversations around flexibility. So when people say to us, we have a very flexible system, we say, you might have a flexible system, but are you aware of this occasion when it wasn't quite so flexible? What can we do to improve this? And that is actually incredibly powerful. If you go into the room armed with good data, it allows you to actually drive the outcomes that you're seeking to achieve here. So in many ways, I suppose the request from Tim and myself is we need you to help us. And it's in this regard, we want you to test the system, and please don't be self-limiting. I think in some of the conversations we've had with a number of operators, they have assumed that they won't be able to do something because it says on the website of one of the member states that it takes so many days to do X, Y, and Z. So they assume that they will not be able to get permission to do what they may have an entitlement to do. We want you to test the systems and come back to us and say, oh, that it was flexible. What you're being told by the EU member states is that they are being flexible. They are helping us in these types of scenarios. And that allows us to engage constructively. It won't be a quick process in certain areas because they need to go away and discuss it both internally with their government on occasion, and sometimes it needs a little bit of changes to their law. We need to be understanding of the situation that we're actually inheriting here, because we are being treated as a rest of the world carrier. I think that's one of the big changes for us in terms of how we actually manage it. We're different because obviously geographically we are so close to the EU and we have long and good standing relationships upon which we can draw. But we have to bear in mind it is a different scenario now. We're not part of the EU. We do not have the same rights that we might have, but we still have the same friendships. And that allows, and we do not detect any ill will in the conversations that we have with the member states. Quite the contrary, they want to help us get through to another side where both parties can be content with a situation that has evolved. We're now in a situation where we hopefully can find a good outcome for both industry and for consumers. And I'll stop there if I may.
Thanks, David. And if I can just jump in to underline that feedback point, which is just so critical. It's been something, as I said, Mark and Lindsay and team have been assisting us with, but having that feedback loop is absolutely critical in these discussions, and indeed just on wider issues. So if there is something that you need to feedback or would like to feedback that you think that we could help with through these discussions, or indeed just separately, as David said, we know all of our counterparts in EU member states and have regular discussions with them. So if there's an issue that you think you can help with, then please feed it through, and then we can consider how we can best act. I think, Mark, we've run up to our 15 minutes, so I apologise for that because we haven't left much time for questions.
I'm sure everyone's really interested, so we're quite happy to run on for a few minutes. I just wanted to reinforce what you've said in terms of sharing that information to help out the process. We've seen examples where people have just not tried to do business because they thought it was too difficult. So it's not just being declined, it's actually not pushing forward and attempting it in the first place. And we must reinforce to everybody, do not be put off. Still try for the business. And you'll probably be surprised a lot of times that people are changing their approach as things are evolving. The other thing to say is that as far as helping you guys out is concerned, the whole process, it's not like you just write a letter across to our colleagues in the EU and everyone responds immediately with, can we meet next week? There are some places that have never done permitting before. There are some places that are very bureaucratic and it might take 2 or 3 months to get through the process. So I just want to share the fact that it won't be for the want of trying to get everybody across the line. And what we may well need is help from many of the people who are attending today to encourage some of the member states, if you have operations there, to participate in the process, because those links may not be as well established. It all happened automatically in many places in the past and didn't even have a department that did permits. Is that a fair comment, you guys?
Very fair comment. I think we're fine. Bear in mind that many of the countries we had to deal with, states we had to deal with, got a few permits a year from rest of the world carriers. Now they're getting lots of permits from EU operators and are having to adjust to the new world just as we are.
So, and something in case now, here we go. A question's come in on the side here. Do you have a quick update on the status of bilaterals beyond the EU, member states with other countries?
Tim?
Yeah, so if I understand that correctly, so I mean the usual role of our team, and in fact a lot of our team is dealing with our bilateral air services agreements with non-EU countries, and these have well predated the UK-EU deal. So the UK has bilateral air services arrangements with 156 countries around the world. Those discussions around those arrangements continually are ongoing, but those agreements are in place and provide the basis for air services between those countries and non-EU countries. You will have seen recently that some of the agreements that were part of EU negotiated agreements have been concluded or published. You would have seen late last year that the signing of the UK-US air transport agreement, which covers some of those issues. So that work is absolutely absolutely continues to ongo beyond just the work we're doing on the EU exit topics. I think very happy, perhaps given the suite and range of those agreements, to look at specific examples any of your members might be interested in, and provide an update on those via correspondence.
Well, I think that's a good suggestion, actually, Tim. We'll take that into our weekly review, and we'll ask questions of members and share that with you for all of the spare time that you've got during negotiations to go and pick that up as well.
We've banked our spare time for later in the year, Mark. I think.
Yeah, I think so. Big break required.
So just one final point is we're very close to industry. We're very grateful to the help that the BBGA has given us throughout this process. You've acted as a splendid conduit, providing us with information. And we would ask your members to allow you to continue to do that. It helps us enormously.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one more question, and then I will let the session terminate so people can have a comfort break and grab a coffee. First of all, for people who are raising their hands in the audience, a glitch of the software update is we can't see who it is. So if you could write questions in the Q&A in the interim, that would be appreciated. The last question I've got here, and excuse me for peering over, any update on bilateral agreements which could affect part NCO aircraft based in the UK? For example, an MREG registered with a CAA is being based in the UK.
Well, MREG isn't commercial anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem. They should be able to carry on very much as they did before, unless someone wants to tell me to the contrary, in which case it's a different conversation.
So, as it says there, there's nothing really that we would see that would affect private NCO. There's no change to that status. You're not allowed to do that commercial activity before or after. No change there. Okay, look, that's appreciated. Anything else that you guys would like to highlight at all?
No, as I said, I think with the time we've had, hopefully we've given a flavour. Very happy. Well, we will be continuing to provide updates on how those discussions go through Mark, you and colleagues as to where the discussions lead, and very happy to provide more information on what they contain and where they do or do not pertain. But no, really appreciate the chance to just speak briefly to the conference today, and look forward to working together going forward.
And just to briefly add, we are very happy to tactically engage where operators have particular problems. So don't feel that they have to wait and just report it to you. If there's something there that we feel that we might be able to do on the ground, please via you or directly come to us and see what we can do in the art of the practical.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I've seen really good response coming through to sort out those short-term problems. So please don't put us as a fuse in the process in the BBGA. David and the team have been reacting to those things directly, but we want to gather the data to make a better case when the negotiations start. On that note, I'm going to end it. Thank you very much for the questions, some of which we didn't pick up. What we'll try and do is pick those up and share them with the team later for other sessions. We will end now, and then we'll start back afterwards and talk about real-world operators and what they've been facing. as a consequence of everything that's rolled out. But thank you very much for taking the time, gentlemen, and goodbye to everyone else for a few minutes.